We had a meeting at Lawrence Livermore, a strange kind of meeting that you have in nuclear weapons labs, that asked the question, could nuclear weapons be used to modify Earth, processes in some way to be used as a military weapon? And so we were discussing things, well, could you explode a hydrogen bomb off the coast and create a tidal wave that would wipe out a city and so on? And the conclusion at the end of this meeting was that if you're willing to use nuclear weapons as a military tool, it's easier just to drop the bomb on the city. I mean, Monsanto, one of the most popular GMO-type plants in the U.S. Monsanto sells Roundup, which kills weeds, and then they have genetically modified organisms that are Roundup resistant. And so they sell, first they sell the Roundup, and then you plant the corn or whatever that's Roundup resistant. And, a lot of people in the rest of the world says, well, how does this really help food production in the world? Isn't this really designed mostly to help Monsanto? And I think that the same thing with geoengineering, that if you feel like, well, isn't this really just to help ExxonMobil sell more oil, that it will reach, that people will be very skeptical. And so I think it's important, I think this emergency response framing is important, because if you look at it as, well, this will mean we don't have to work so hard on emissions reduction, then people should be rightly skeptical of these things. We're altering our environment already. For example, just the sulfate aerosols put into the lower atmosphere by the Chinese has been associated with a weakening of the Asian monsoon. A monsoon happens when the air heats up and rises over the continent, and then it sucks in the moist air off the ocean, and then it drops its rain out, and you get the monsoon. But with all the aerosols over China, China's being cooled by this sulfate cloud that they're producing, and that's having detectable effects on the strength of the monsoon. And so we're already using particles inadvertently to modify climate on a big scale. And if China would just sort of turn on and off its sulfur scrubbing equipment, there's potential that it could modulate the monsoon intentionally with its current energy infrastructure. So, so it's definitely within our ability to modify climate. We're already using particles inadvertently to modify climate on a big scale. And I think we're already knowingly modifying climate, we're just not doing it intentionally. It's the byproduct, I think, of flying airplanes or of having coal-fired power plants. But I mean, we know we're changing the climate, we're just not doing it intentionally. In California, there are some river basins where they've been seeding clouds for the last 50 years in an effort to get more snow to fall in the valleys and have more water for crops in the spring, because water is a big issue here in California. And this is essentially stealing water away from other western states, because that rain would have fallen somewhere else. And so already we have a half-century of attempting to control weather and climate in California. And the interesting thing is that this goes on barely recognized by the average person. It's never discussed. It's never a policy issue. And so, a lot of times we think, oh, if we started trying to alter climate or the weather, it's going to be a huge, political discussion. But we've been altering the weather in the western U.S. and nobody cares. And so the question is, would people, if people really started putting aerosols above the Arctic to save Arctic sea ice, would people really care outside of a small group of educated and informed, politically minded people? But would the average person who watches television at night care? I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to say. In fact, I was at one one party in San Francisco. I said that, that maybe by the end of this century, half of all species on this planet might be extinct. And, she responded, well, how does that affect me? If you would have told her that her favorite television program were canceled, it would have been a bigger response than to say half the species would go extinct.